And now the news. And this week, Jaguar learns how to count to 1, the first electric GTI, and a whole host of supercar news. Jaguar has finally unveiled the name for the car that's going to kick off the new era of Jaguar, and that being the fantastically lazy Type 01. We all saw the Type 00 concept car and thought, okay, that'll probably be a placeholder, but no. Turns out all they could really do was add one digit to those numbers and call it a day. Even though they went to great lengths at the time to pretend that their heritage doesn't exist, the type in the Type 01 name refers back to legendary predecessors such as the E-Type. A very confusing message, but nevertheless we'll go with it. 0 is for zero tailpipe emissions. Again, get creative. That's really, really simple. And just to stay with the theme of simplicity and laziness, 1 is because it's the first of a new generation. So if we put it all together, this is the successor to a bunch of old cars that were known for great sound and fantastic engines that doesn't have an engine and also has nothing to do with the past. Nevertheless, it is what it is, so let's get into the specs. The car will have just under 1,000 horsepower and just under 1,300 Nm of torque. It will start at around 120,000 pounds, but it's expected to pull in around 140,000 pounds on average. The reason for this being that there will be a lot of different customization options available. The whole point here was to place this car in a cheaper bracket than other luxury GTs, such as those coming from Bentley and Rolls-Royce. But once you start adding options to it, it will raise the price a significant amount while still being competitive with those vehicles. It's going to weigh in at 2.7 tons, no doubt because of the giant battery sitting underneath it, but that battery will be good for 435 miles of range. On top of that, it'll also come with super fast DC fast charging, allowing it to add 200 miles of range in around 15 minutes. Now that's all that out the way, but what do I think of it? Honestly, I still don't like it conceptually. I think while it is a very good looking car, I don't like what Jaguar has done to itself. I think there could have been a much more graceful way to do this while still getting to the same outcome. It's well documented that Jaguar do have a lot of struggles, and they needed to do some kind of big pivot at some point in order to survive. But I think there was a better way of handling it. There was no need to go on this big offensive and to basically tell all their existing customers that they are useless pieces of crap. You could have gone in this direction while still acknowledging the existing customer base and saying to them, look, we love you, we will continue to support you, but this is the direction we're going in. This said, I do think this car is going to save Jaguar. And the reason I think that is along similar lines to what the managing director said about this car. Basically, he said that they're going to be aiming this car at rich people. And rich people don't actually care about a powertrain, which is part of the reason why they've gone full EV with it. Cars like this exist to be a statement piece. They're also not going to be the only car in a family. So even though the car does have good range and is generally going to be a very capable motor vehicle, we assume, it's not like they need this car to do absolutely everything. This is going to be a car that's purchased because somebody wants it, not because they need a personal form of transport. This will be a car to be seen in, and that's exactly why it's going to succeed. Because a lot of people will go out of their way to buy a car like this, customize it to be their version of it, and then make sure that they're seen in the car at big events and such. It's playing to rich people's ego, and that is exactly why I think this will actually work. VW has finally unveiled the first electric GTI, that obviously being the Polo. There's been a lot of noise, but finally we have the official unveiling of the vehicle. As we already know, the car is going to have 223 horsepower and 219 Nm of torque. That'll be good, pushing the front wheels around, for a 0 to 100 km/h time of 6.8 seconds. And being all electric, obviously range is a factor here, and that comes in at 424 kilometers off I nearly said tank, a charge. They're trying to do all the right things with it to make it an exciting little hot hatch, but whether that happens or not, only time will tell. What we do know is that it'll have an electronically controlled front locking diff, along with adaptive suspension to make it as engaging a ride as possible. Now for me, I both like this car and don't like this car, and I'll say why. First of all, what I will say is I do actually want to see one on the road because images don't always give the full idea of what a vehicle will look like in real life. Because as I look at these pictures, I feel like as a whole, the car seems to look quite good. And that's in spite of my misgivings around what the taillights look like and the fact that I hate light bars. But the individual parts are kind of weird. So if you look at the front bumper, It looks almost like some kind of fish mouth with two red teeth sticking out of it. Those teeth are supposed to emulate tow hooks from race cars. But let's be honest here, you're not fooling anyone with that. It just looks like a bit of red painted plastic. The wheels are easy, I really don't like them. Now I'm not going to go further with that because I don't know what would look good. I just think that you could have done better with this. Continuing down the side skirts I think look really cool. I love that sort of half folded over look. It just gives it a little bit of something different and kind of makes it stand out a bit more. The back bumper though was the first thing I actually noticed and said, you know what, this is something I generally don't like. The other parts, even though I complain about it, I can sort of see how they work with the rest of it. The back bumper just feels a little bit not Polo, if that makes any sense. I don't like these big sort of fake diffuser things. Because they're just that, fake. It's the same like on the inside of the car, when if you're in the GTI driving mode, it pumps fake internal combustion noise into the car. I'm not going to go on a rant about how fake everything is becoming, but let's just put this down as yet another example. And then to bring it all together, VW themselves have actually said the body kit is designed for efficiency, not performance. I can sympathize in a way because obviously it's an electric car and everyone panics about range on an electric car. Given the fact that this car will probably operate mostly in countries where EV infrastructure is quite good already, I feel like they could have sacrificed a little bit more range than they did over the standard Polo to make the car just look that little bit better and to actually have a bit more of either a sporty look or a more refined sort of GTI look. The interior looks great though. I've been very complimentary of this interior, one or two things aside, but as far as I'm concerned, this does look like a really good place to be. There are some nice options as well, with a 10-speaker sound system, a glass roof, and massaging seats all available. The car is going to be priced from £34,000, which is a lot, but I do wonder if this will actually work out, given that with cars being so expensive these days, you might find that previous generations who would go for the Golf GTI will now be looking at the Polo and thinking that's more within my price range. Whether this car becomes a success or not is anyone's guess at this point, but this is a solid entry for GTI in the world of electric. So I figured I'd do something a little bit different with this segment, and instead of just talking about one car, I'd talk about multiple, seeing as we're going to be covering a few supercars here and just some general news around them. This is the Capricorn 01 Zagato. It's the first hypercar from a company called Capricorn, and it's limited to 19 units. The cool thing about this is they've gone quite old school with it. So it's got a 5.2-litre supercharged Ford V8, and that's connected to a 6-speed manual gearbox, although I will point out the concept has a 5-speed. It will make over 900 horsepower, and they've made a very clear point in saying that this will not be a hybrid. So we expect the car to be pretty analog, or at least as much as it's allowed to be in this day and age. It has an interesting interior with seemingly the passenger side of the dashboard just missing, although in fairness, the rest of it does look pretty good. It's going for over $3.4 million, so as expected, beyond the reach of most of us. They're making a noise with a specific version of this car though. It's a one-of-one called the Tutto Rosso. Unsurprisingly, it's a commission because why would you paint a whole car red? Yet more proof that money does not equal taste. The car is only homologated for the EU market, but let's be honest, it will find its way to America eventually. It's good to see that old school cars can still be made. I mean, we don't know if it actually drives well, but if it does, we could be looking at the next Pagani or Koenigsegg here. Sticking with one-offs, the next car we have here is the Ferrari HC25. It's part of Ferrari's Special Projects program, which does one-off cars for special customers. This car is based on the F8 rather than the newer 296. The reason most likely is that the F8 was not a hybrid, so you're getting a pure V8 out of this. It's a very good looking car, and you don't always get that with these one-offs. The car supposedly takes some design cues from the F80 and the 12 Cilindri. On top of that, the interior is completely custom and works on a nice grey and yellow theme. There's no word on technical specs for this, but you would imagine it'll be similar to the F8. Next up we have Lotus. They are one of the many British car companies who have been invaded and raided by foreigners.
Well. How the turntables...
What we see before us here is the Lotus Type 135. Thankfully, that's just a codename, so we're not expecting another Jaguar Type situation. The car was initially supposed to be an all-electric vehicle and a successor to the Emira, but the car will now be a hybrid V8 with nearly 1,000 horsepower. The full reveal will be later this year, and the car will go on sale in 2028. The thing that I'm curious about here is whether the car will actually compete or not, because it's dropping into a market full of hybrid V8s and V6s. It's got to do something really special to stand out and to actually make money. The last car on the list to cover here is the Brabus Bodo. Usually we associate Brabus with making hot Mercedes-Benzes, but in this case they've built their own vehicle. The car is not completely their own though, because it is based on an Aston Martin Vanquish. However, it looks almost nothing like that. I can only imagine the presence this car must have on the road, because it looks outstanding. Everything about it screams power and get out of my way, and it's a really fitting tribute to a man who's given us so many high-powered and over-the-top Mercedes-Benzes. The car has a twin-turbo V12 in it, and it's good for 360 kilometers an hour. It's pushing out close to 1,000 horsepower, and weirdly enough, given the exclusivity of the other cars on this list as well as their prices, this feels like a bargain at roughly $1.16 million. It appears that in honor of Brabus's birth year, the car is going to be limited to 77 units. Honestly, of all the cars that we've listed here today, I think this is the one I'd want to park on my driveway the most. Lastly, in a bit of an opposite story compared to what we've seen, Audi is not announcing a third generation R8. The head of Audi Sport has come out and said that they're not closing the door completely on an R8, but there needs to be a very good business case for them to greenlight another R8. The previous R8s were considered halo products, and they could be made just to draw attention to the brand. But the VW Group is not in a good financial situation at the moment, and apparently they just can't afford to build a halo car right now. Further proof, in case anyone doesn't believe them, is the fact that they've gotten rid of Bugatti. Granted, they did say if the car does get made, it will be a hybrid and not a full EV, which is quite the turnaround given Audi's plans not long ago to have EV sports cars. Personally, I think it's worth doing as a halo product. The original R8 was a huge success, and so was the second gen. If they just follow the formula, the result should be the same. People really love an R8, and if you put it out there as a cheaper supercar that's a little bit more accessible to the masses, you're going to have a winner. So fresh off getting their way when it comes to emissions regulations in Europe, a bunch of Europe's top automakers met with EU officials last week again. Apparently this time they want to take it even further. Last time they were asking for the pinky, now they want the whole hand. There's no word on an outcome, but insiders have said that what they want to do is they want to change policies around sourcing local materials, and potentially ask for even more relaxing of the emissions targets. My assumption here is that they probably can't afford to source the local stuff, given how expensive those materials are in the EU compared to places like China. Germany's main automotive lobbying company, VDA, has also added that up to 125,000 jobs could be lost due to the way the policies are currently written. Now, it should be pointed out that the VDA represents 620 companies, all in the German motor industry, so it would be hard to believe that they are completely objective in this as well, because chances are they'll also be getting good kickbacks if the emissions targets can be dropped a bit more. I'm not saying that's the case, I'm just saying that nobody is perfectly altruistic. Part of why they're pushing this is because of sluggish EV sales in Europe, and also heavy competition from China. The fact is that EU brands just can't compete on price, so it would make sense if the EU wants their car manufacturers to survive, they need to be a little bit more lenient. And to keep this global, let's remember the US plays a big part in all of this as well. Firstly, they have the tariffs, which means it's a lot more expensive to get European cars into the States as well, one of the biggest markets for most European manufacturers. Then if you consider the policy changes within the US, particularly those that are pushing against EVs, it means that demand for EVs just isn't that high in the States at the moment. That's going to be a problem if you're telling all your manufacturers to pump out EVs instead of other cars. The knock-on effect of this is that if EU companies want to be building cars for the EU and for the United States and for the rest of the world, they're going to need multiple platforms for the same vehicle. That's going to create a lot of extra expenses, and they just can't afford that. Alternatively, they need to be able to build one platform that can then service all the different parts of the world. That in itself is going to make that individual car very expensive and probably drive down sales in a different way. So they're stuck in a bit of a rock and a hard place at the moment, and I think that's why they're going back and asking for more leniency around this. Whether that actually works or not is anyone's guess, given the EU has been really difficult around this from the start. And now for the recalls, and good news, there aren't any this week. So, that is the end of the news.